Good evening, and welcome to the Environmental Protection Agency and the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection fireworks site information session. I'm Lisa Green, Town Administrator for Hanson. I would like to welcome you all to this information session. We do have among us, we have some select board members from the town of Pembroke, and we have our select board members, Ann Rain and Ed Heel, in with us. And I will let the rest of the folks introduce themselves in just a moment. But just to give you a little bit of background on the fireworks site. So most of you probably already know a lot of the background, but way back in, I think it was World War II, this site was instrumental in developing weapons for the war, of which they basically detonated some of the weapons as they tried them out to see how they'd work. And what that did over the years was contaminate the soil with munitions, which I never knew what a munition was until my first week on the job here and learned what it was, in explosives. And what that did was cause a tremendous amount of contamination in the fireworks site, which a lot of the property is located in Hanover. There is property located in Hanson with Factory Pond, and the town of Pembroke is also impacted by this. So this information session is being brought to you by, again, the EPA. When the ground pollution was discovered, Massachusetts entered into an agreement with the owners of the property called the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which put millions of dollars in a trust in order to clean the property. Over the years, and I believe that was about 12 years ago or so, over the years, the company has been working to clean up the munitions, and as they got deeper and deeper involved, they discovered more and more pollution. And over the years, they have worked to clean it up, but unfortunately, the money is starting to run out. And it has become basically to where they are at a point now where they have no more money to continue the cleanup efforts. So we are here tonight to explore and have the EPA talk with us about looking at deeming this site a superfund and getting the federal government involved with helping us finish cleaning up the site. And if that doesn't happen, what happens is the money left over will be used to secure the site, and it will sit there with nothing happening until somebody does something. So with that, given that, I'm going to turn this over to Charlotte Gray from the Environmental Protection Agency.
Thank you, Lisa. So thank you everyone for coming out tonight. My name is Charlotte Gray, and I work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. EPA, and I'm here tonight with my colleagues from EPA, as well as the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP. The reason that we are here tonight is to give you an update on current site status and also the potential future for the National Fireworks site. I do want to highlight that we had a meeting last week in Hanover as well, and it's going to be the exact same information that was presented last week is going to be presented again today, so it's just a duplicate. And with that, we're ready for the next slide. And so this is a brief agenda going over what we will be talking about. So we're going to start off with introductions. As each of us come up to speak, we will introduce ourselves and let you know who we are affiliated with. From there, we're going to talk about Mass DEP is going to cover the site history, as well as the response action, current site status, risk, and funding. From there, EPA is going to cover the Superfund and the NPL listing process, as well as the pre-remedial activities leading up to the site, the remedial process, and community involvement. From there, we will then go to question and answer. So when it comes to the question and answer portion of the presentation, we ask that you're just holding your questions until the end. You'll notice that we have set up right now 2 different mics. So when it's time, you can come up and ask your question. And so we'll do about 3 people in the room, and then we will go to Zoom and we will answer those questions. For those that are calling in with Zoom, please just write your questions in the chat. So we will be answering it through that. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Len. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Len Pinot. I'm an environmental engineer with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And I'm the Mass DEP project manager for the former National Fireworks site. My presentation to you tonight includes background information and a description of response actions taken at the site to date. Historical activities at the site included research, development, manufacture, and testing of munitions and pyrotechnics for the U.S. government and the commercial manufacture of civilian fireworks for over 60 years. The site is currently undergoing assessment and cleanup under the Massachusetts environmental regulations to identify and address areas of soil, sediment, surface water, and groundwater contamination, and munitions and explosives. Mass DEP is providing direct oversight of the assessment and cleanup activities. Mercury, lead, organic solvents, and propellants and explosives were used in the manufacturing operations at the site, and mercury has been detected in sediment, soil, groundwater, and fish tissue. Lead and other metals, as well as volatile organic compounds, have been detected in soils, groundwater, and in sediment. Munitions and explosives have been found in soil and in factory pond. Next slide, please. I'm going to attempt to use my pointer to show you this graphic. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that. I'll try to explain. This graphic shows a general depiction of the former National Fireworks during its operational time frame. The site is generally bounded by School Street in Hanover to the north, King Street to the west, East Washington Street to the south, and Winter Street to the east. The red squares identify the types of activities that were taken at the site. So the top square is where the northern portion of the site is primarily where the manufacturing activities took place. The central portion of the site is where manufactured items were stored and also raw material were stored. And the southern portion of the site, that red square, identifies where munitions testing activities took place and also certain disposal activities took place. In 1986, EPA required former site owner Susquehanna Corporation to investigate the southern portion of the site and to remove some drums of chemical waste and other debris that were found there. Due to a public request for fish toxics monitoring between 1993 and 1995, Mass DEP conducted some limited sampling of surface water, sediment, fish tissue in streams and ponds at the site for mercury, lead, and metals. This Mass DEP work resulted in a Massachusetts Department of Public Health posting of the pond for no fish consumption, and that posting exists today. In 1995, Mass DEP identified Kerr-McGee Corporation, also known as Tronox, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, National Coatings Corporation, Susquehanna Corporation, and the U.S. Department of Defense as potentially responsible parties for environmental contamination at the site. Between 1992 and 2005, Tronox, MIT, and National Coating Corporation, also referred to as the cooperating parties, conducted environmental investigation and characterization activities at the site for contaminants. That work was done under the Massachusetts environmental regulations. In 2009, Tronox Incorporated filed for bankruptcy, and Mass DEP asserted a claim to obtain funds from the Tronox bankruptcy for response costs. In 2011, the Tronox Incorporated Expendable Trust was established with proceeds from the bankruptcy, and contributions were made to the trust in 2011 of approximately $950,000, and 2015 of approximately $67 million, and in 2016 of approximately $1.3 million. Next slide, please. So there's another graphic here that I'm not going to be able to point to. I apologize. Might be able to do that. You may not be able to hear me. So this graphic depicts the current depiction of the site where contaminants have come to be located. The dark green identifies the dark green area on the left is really the outline of the site when it was in its manufacturing day. That dark green line is the site boundary, and you'll note that the site boundary travels down the Indian Head River, through the North River, past Ludham's Ford, and to the confluence of the North-South River to the east. It's important to note that the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Fish Advisory is for Factory Pond and the Indian Head River corridor, and that advisory goes all the way out to where the North-South River intersects Route 3 in Norwell and Pembroke. From 2015 to 2018, the cooperating parties conducted additional activities to address data gaps and investigate areas impacted from a historic flooding event that happened in 2010. The investigation included soil, sediment, groundwater, and surface water sampling for contaminants, and these activities were funded by the Tronox Trust. From 2016 to 2024, munitions and explosives investigation and remediation has been ongoing. In 2018, it's important to note that munitions were found in Factory Pond, and these activities were funded also by the Tronox Trust. From 2019 to 2021, remedial alternatives were developed and evaluated to address contamination identified from the site investigation. These remedial alternatives were finalized in 2021 after public comment period and with DEP approval. Again, these activities were funded by the Tronox Trust. Between 2021 and 2022, work was performed by the cooperating parties to actually design a remediation alternative to clean up the site. However, this work was not completed because of funding constraints by the trust. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the current status of response actions. As of November 2023, over 192,000 munitions items representing greater than 35,000 pounds have been removed from the site, and approximately 11% of those items contained explosives, which posed a public safety hazard and were required to be destroyed on-site by the Massachusetts State Police. Also, as of November 2023, 15 of 22 areas of munitions, soil, sediment contamination, and the southern portion of the site have been investigated and cleaned up under the Commonwealth's environmental regulations. Current site activities include soil sampling, off-site disposal of contaminated soil, sediment, and asbestos-containing material, the destruction of munitions items, and demobilization. Mass DEP expects these activities to be completed by October of this year. When those activities are completed, the site will be secured with access restrictions to the site and to Factory Pond until site investigation and cleanup activities begin again. And it's important to note that Mass DEP is working closely with Hanover Public Safety on the site security and safety issues. Next slide, please. So I'd like to talk a little bit about current site risks. There are no public or private water supply wells that have been impacted by contaminants released at the site. And by private water supply wells, we're including residential wells. However, there continue to be risks from direct contact with contaminated impacted soil and sediment. To prevent these risks, the southern site access is restricted and patrolled by Hanover Police. Impacted soils are being excavated and properly disposed of off-site, and access to Factory Pond is restricted. There continue to be risks to people, to fish, eating birds, and to wildlife from ingestion of contaminants found in fish. And as I stated previously, a fish advisory for Factory Pond is in place to prevent risks to people. And there continue to be safety risks to people from munitions items identified in the southern portion of the site, including in Factory Pond. And as I mentioned previously again, access to Factory Pond is restricted to help prevent these risks. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kathy Kiley from Mass DEP, who will present some overheads to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Kiley. I'm with the Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup, the Technical and Financial Services group, and we provide support to all the regions on technical sites. So, as Lenny said, the trust was established in 2011, and there's been many contributions through 2016. And this table shows what the money's been spent on and when. And just to sort of highlight a couple of things, I do want to just mention, so the leftmost row, I don't know how you can see it, is this describes the action, then the work, the time that the work occurred, the approximate cost for that work. And if you can have any problem hearing me, please let me know. So the first item I wanted to mention was just that first row talks about the additional site characterization that took place from 2015 to 2018. And this is when they did that additional soil and sediment and sampling of the surface water and things. And that took place from 2015 to 2018, and it cost a little over $630,000. The next work that took place was the development and evaluating of the various remedial alternatives to address that contamination. And that took place from 2019 to 2021 at a cost of approximately $177,000. The next step after that was that design work, where the contractor was starting to do the work to design that specific remedial alternatives. And work was done on that from 2021 to 2022, and that was approximately $530,000. Then the most important or most largest item on this table was the work that was done to address the munitions and explosives. And you can see that took place from 2016 to present, and that's approximately $55 million to date. The next item that was where there was some costs from the trust was that there was some DEP personnel and contractor costs. As Lenny mentioned, DEP does provide direct oversight of the project, so there was technical staff that was involved with that direct oversight. We also had a contractor to review the remedial alternatives that were chosen and the cost to make sure that we could approve that, as well as some contractor costs for the work that was done when we did the sediment sampling downstream of Factory Pond Dam. And that was approximately $380,000. So the total that's been dispersed to date is that $56.6 million to date. And again, the big take-home message from this slide is that much of the funding that's been expended to date has been devoted to the removal of the significant amount of the munitions, including the explosives, that were left at the site. And this work was done to be protective of public health and address that immediate risk to the public. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this table presents the overall status of the trust. We talked about the fact that the trust was receiving the contributions that Lenny had mentioned, and we've also been earning some interest on that. So the total that we've received to date is approximately $74.23 million. I also want to just call your attention to the right-hand column. That's a running balance as I go through this, just so you can see, can follow along with what that balance would be. The next line is the amount that's been dispersed to date from the trust. And this essentially just is all the investigation, response, activities for munitions and characterization, et cetera, and the DEP costs. And that was at $56.68 million, which would leave a balance of about $17.55 million. The next line is the prioritized response actions that are ongoing now. There was some work that was still hasn't yet been billed for 2023, and some additional work in 2004 that Lenny mentioned, and this is for the ongoing munitions and asbestos. That's estimated to be $7.74 million, which would leave a balance of approximately $9.85. Now that $9.85 million would also be the balance that would be available for the safe shutdown and security and any response actions that might be necessary until the cleanup actions resumed. So the other part down here is that I want to bring to your attention is that the predicted cost to complete the required cleanup, the remediation of the site, is estimated to be greater than $200 million. Now that $200 million, that's based on the cooperating parties' contractor's estimate of that phase 3, that remedial action alternatives. That was ranging from approximately 72 to 107 million. There's an area where there's the munitions in the pond. It's called the high metal density area, and that estimate was 47 to 75 million, and that alone would be approximately 182 million. Then the area downstream of Factory Pond Dam, it's not really known, so it's sort of to be determined, but we could safely estimate that it could be over 20 million if that same approach was used downstream as what was done, north of the factory pond, which would bring it greater than that 200 million. And so from that, you can see the predicted cleanup costs far exceed the funding that was available from the trust. The next slide, please. Thank you. So, all through this Mass DEP, our priority really has remained that the cleanup of the site happen for the benefit of the surrounding community and the environment. And to that end, there's all the work that's been done. The cooperating parties contractor has done this work, funded through the trust from 2015 to present. But as we've discussed, that funding, remaining funding is insufficient to complete the required response actions. And the Commonwealth and the potentially responsible parties could not reach an agreement regarding estimated costs for conducting complete cleanup of the entire site, including the Indian Head River corridor, and the Commonwealth could not accept the settlement that would not achieve a level of no significant risk of damage to health, safety, and public welfare throughout the site. And so given the costs for the remaining cleanup and the status of those settlement negotiations, Mass DEP reached out to EPA in November of 2022 as a possible option for funding the cleanup at the site through the Superfund National Priorities List process. And Mass DEP and EPA often coordinate to address contaminated sites of this magnitude, and it's been very successful. So with that, I'll turn it over to our EPA colleagues.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everybody. I am Mandy Lau. I am EPA's National Priorities List Coordinator, and I have sitting up with me Chao Wu. She is the Section Manager for the Site Assessment or Pre-Remedial Program, and also Bob Chantarullo. He is the Branch Manager for our Remedial Program in Superfund. So what is Superfund? It is the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, also known as CERCLA, or more informally Superfund. It allows EPA to clean up contaminated sites and also forces the parties responsible for the contamination to either perform cleanups or reimburse the government for EPA-led cleanup work. So our goals in Superfund is to protect human health and the environment by cleaning up these contaminated sites, make responsible parties pay for cleanup work, and involve communities in the entire Superfund process. And in the end, return Superfund sites to productive use. I also want to note that along with remedial resources, Superfund also has resources for potential responsible party search and community involvement and outreach. Listed on our webpage, we have a community guide on what Superfund is if you want to learn more, where it explains the entire Superfund process, but also lists out ways community members can get involved. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is the National Priority List, or the NPL? It is a list of sites that EPA determines require further detailed investigation and potential cleanup action in accordance with CERCLA. Investigations at these NPL sites determine whether long-term threats to human health and the environment exist, and where needed, comprehensive strategy to address threats is implemented. Next slide, please. So why do we want to add the National Fireworks Site to the NPL? So again, sites on the NPL are subject to detailed investigation and cleanup where warranted. Only sites on the NPL are eligible to receive federal Superfund resources for cleanup. Federal resources can include monetary support as well as expertise and staffing. And absent the use of federal resources, cleanup strategies may not be able to be pursued. So given the projected cost for the remaining cleanup and status of settlement negotiations, Mass DEP reached out to the EPA to address the site through NPL listing. So to reiterate what Kathy said earlier, the trust fund is running out of money, and listing this site is the only path forward to receive the funding necessary for cleanup. Next slide, please. So this is a graphic of the entire Superfund process from site discovery all the way up to finish where a site is eligible and ready for future use. As you can see, the red circle, that is currently where we are, where we determined the National Fireworks Site would need a long-term cleanup, and the blue arrow is when the site is listed on the NPL, and that is when we can start to expend federal resources. In between the two icons is in the middle of the process, we can start activities such as the potential responsible party search. Next slide, please. So how is a site added to the National Priorities List? It is done through federal rulemaking and requires a letter of concurrence from the governor. And then the site is first proposed to the NPL, where we would have a 60-day comment period. And depending on how many public comments we get, then the site is finalized. Next slide, please. So this is a more detailed timeline of the site assessment or pre-remedial activities that lead up to MPL listing. As you can see, we've already performed the preliminary assessment and site inspection when EPA was last involved at the site. So currently ongoing is the site reassessment, and the expanded site inspection would occur if during our reassessment now, we determine that additional sampling is needed. And with all that information we gathered, we would develop the HRS package where we hope to complete it in a year or less. And then concurrently, we will work with Mass DEP to get a letter of concurrence from the governor. And that is when the site will be proposed. And that happens twice a year in either February or August. Next slide, please. So to go in a little more detail of the activities that were just listed in that timeline, again, we're currently conducting a site reassessment where we're reviewing all available data and reports that were produced within the last 12 years that we were, since EPA was last present at the site. And from there, we would determine if there are any data gaps that need to be addressed and additional samples that need to be taken. And then we would update or develop the HRS or hazard ranking system package. So this is our most important activity in the pre-remedial stage. It includes a narrative, checklists, signatures, and score sheets, but it also includes the documentation record. So if a site's listing is challenged in court, EPA's defense of the site score is restricted to the information contained in the doc record. So to refute legal challenges, information in the HRS doc record must be objective, accurate, and complete. And then it would have to go through multiple rounds of review from our headquarters. From there, we would get a letter of concurrence before proposal, and then we would propose a site to the national priorities list. And we're hopeful that the earliest we can do this is August of 2025. And from there, we'll have a 60-day public comment period where we would finalize the site to the MPL, and then there would be a federal registered publication. Next slide, please. And these are some statistics of Superfund in New England. So there are 41 Superfund sites in Massachusetts, 123 in New England, 1,833 nationally. So these numbers are to illustrate that there are many communities that have gone through the entire process, and so that you can look to your neighboring towns or cities for guidance or examples on how they address having a Superfund in their city or town. And then I will pass it on to Charlotte to finish off the presentation.
Great, thank you, Mandy. Next slide. So now this slide goes over the Superfund remedial process. So as Mandy was saying, once a site is listed, there still are a number of steps that we will have to go through. So the key parts of that process are going to be assessment, the characterization of the site, selection of the remedy, the cleanup, and the post-construction. And you'll see that throughout that whole entire planning process, redevelopment we're thinking about, as well as community involvement. At EPA, community involvement is a key aspect to the work that we do, and we take it very seriously. Next slide. Some examples of community involvement that can happen at a site are going to be things such as public meetings, like we're having tonight, a public hearing, fact sheets, sending out postcards. There's a number of different ways that we like to engage with the community. So far on this slide, you can see what we have done and how we have engaged. So as we said last week, we ended up meeting in Hanover. It was the same presentation, but we had 2 different locations for it. After that, next steps are going to be that we're setting up access agreements. So those will be going out maybe tomorrow into the next week, and we'll be asking for access to private property. Additionally, we also have an email list and a website that we're going to be sending out periodic updates on. As you're walking in, you have the opportunity to sign up, or you can also send me an email as well, and I can add you to that list. Next slide. This is going to go over the additional resources that we have. We know that there are a lot of questions and that you're looking for more information. I definitely want to point you to both the EPA and the Mass DEP website. So on EPA's website is epa.gov/ma/national fireworks. And the Massachusetts one is a little bit longer, but you will see it is on there. If you are having trouble finding it, please reach out to me and I can send it over to you. In addition to resources that we have listed out, tonight we have printed out a fact sheet that's going to go over current site status and a little bit of history, as well as having out printed out copies of the PowerPoint. Next slide. And you can also reach out to anyone at Mass DEP or EPA. We're here to help answer your questions and make sure that you have all the information that you are looking for. Some of the questions that we did receive last week, we realized that maybe we need to put some more information out. So an example of that is on the EPA website, we have now added a fact sheet or an FAQ that's focusing on Superfund sites and private properties and how do those interact and how it has the potential to affect property value. In addition to that, we also heard from the last meeting that people were hoping for the Massachusetts Attorney General's office to also listen into this meeting, and so they are here tonight. They called in virtually, so they're here, they're listening to our presentation, as well as they're going to listen to this conversation that we are all going to have as soon as we're done with this presentation. So with that, we're now going to move on to the question and answer section. Again, I want to remind people that the purpose of this meeting was really forward-looking, to make sure that everyone understands what has happened at the site and for us to look to the future and see what are the next steps and what is possible with National Fireworks. So with that, we're going to move on to the question and answer portion of the slideshow. We will leave this slide up just so that you can see our contact information. And for those that are on Zoom, we're just going to ask that you write your questions into the chat, and we'll start with those in the room so you have some time to write. And so with that, if there's anyone in the audience, we're going to do about 3 at a time. There is a microphone right there in that aisle, and there's a microphone here. Feel free to come up and ask your question. I guess also, can everyone see us okay? I know it's a little bit dark up here now, but okay, great.
Hello, Steve Ciciotti from Pembroke. I got a few questions. Number one, what is I know you mentioned that about $200 million for full remediation. What is the estimated time frame for that full remediation?
So we're going to have, Bob, do you mind answering that? So that'll go to or Mandy, EPA will answer that.
Sure, I think the short answer is we don't know yet, and I would add that 200 million is a Mass DEP estimate. So as we switch from the state program to the federal program, we're going to have to look at the site through the lens of our own program. So we'll have to basically go through a remedial investigation and feasibility study to determine what we believe the cleanup action would be. I think we'd have a better feel for the cost and the time frame at that point. So EPA, I don't think has enough info right now to answer that.
Okay, so $200 million is probably a speculative number because that time frame will probably dictate a substantial portion of that cost.
Right.
Another question. It was mentioned that the original responsible party, they obviously disposed in that southern kind of section of the map there, towards where the river is. What kind of manner of disposal was it? Obviously, there's munitions in the water. Did they bury it? Or did they explode it?
So the answer to that question is all what you said, Dave. There was a test range in the southern portion of the site, and so part of what the former National Fireworks site was responsible for was testing the munitions items, so that happened. And there was also disposal activities that took place there. So
All the above and more, basically.
yes, sir.
Okay, a couple more questions. The it was mentioned that there are contaminants found in the fish, obviously the mercury. Were there additional contaminants detected in the fish tissue? beyond the mercury?
Mercury was the primary contaminant found, yes.
Okay, so just mercury as the primary contaminant. So fish oftentimes have mercury in their tissue. What were the levels that were found in fish versus what would be typical for fish? 2 times, 10 times, 100 times?
So I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm happy to provide you with that information.
Okay, thank you.
If you could reach out to me, you have my contact information, or if you want to talk to me after this, I'm happy to get you that information.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
And also, that was Leonard as well, just to remind people for the email.
Hello, I'm Rodney Hall from Hanson, and I got a question about the other side of the street over behind the Forge Pond Park. How much testing has been done out there? Because from there to Rockland, there's tanks in the ground, there's wells with pipes in them that are wide open, pits wide open. I've seen it, I've lived here all my life, I used to play out there, I've seen it. And nothing's been done, nothing's been changed over there. Has that been tested out behind it?
Len, do you want to talk about the site boundary?
I mean, I got pictures of them on my phone right now. Big cement tanks, big cast iron covers, not locked or anything.
So both Mass DEP and EPA are aware that some activities took place on the western portion of King Street, just south of the athletic fields. And so we're looking into that, but yes, we are aware of that activity.
And another question, do they take any air quality readings over there at Landers? That's the dumping site over in that area, right? And he's got 400 or 500 trucks a day coming in and out of there? Has there been any air quality tests since all this been exploding in that area and all the dust and debris?
So I can't speak to the situation at the Landers site, but the southern portion of the site where Mass DEP and the cooperating parties are doing the munitions work is adjacent to PA Landers property. And the work that we're doing, we do take air samples depending on the situation. So we've done that from 2017 to 2024. And we'll continue to do that when we do our work this spring. So,
Have you found elevated contaminants?
no, we tested for particulates. Everything was either non-detect or at what we consider background levels.
Is there copies of this that we can see, or is that public information?
Yes, it is public information, and it's all on DEP's electronic database, which the public has access to. I think one of the slides has actually the link
Could you go to the slide
to
before?
that.
Okay, thank you.
And I just also want to reiterate that if you are having trouble finding documents, feel free, you can reach out to me and we can help you navigate the websites to find what you're looking for.
Is this the one? Sure.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Yep, so if you're looking at the top, the first one is going to be, that's EPA's website, and then underneath, that's Mass DEP's. So you can access anything you need there. Oh, yes.
Is it easy for the general public to navigate those pages?
So I think the EPA one is because I helped to build it. But
I think that's important.
exactly. So with that being said, if you are having difficulty navigating the website, you can't find the document that you're looking for, that's what I'm here for. That's my job, is to make sure that you're getting the information and that it is accessible. So feel free to reach out to me and I can help you navigate those websites or find what you're looking for and email you a copy of it as well.
So the same for the Mass DEP website. If it can be somewhat difficult to navigate, you have to know what you're looking for. Feel free to contact any of us at DEP, and we'll be happy to do the same thing, either help you find it electronically, or we'll make a copy and send it to you.
And we can also mail you copies as well if you prefer. Go ahead.
I had a question. I noticed, I was happy to see that the Indian Head River is part of this. Is that considered part of the site, and that will be cleaned up down to Route 3?
So there's limited sampling that's been done in the Indian Head River, and it was done down to, of the sediment, down to the confluence of the North River. So I think one of the most likely, I'm not going to, well, I think I am speaking a little bit for EPA, but I'll let them add more to it, is as part of their evaluation, they'll be doing a lot more sampling than what was done in the past.
Okay, because I recently went to a meeting of the North and South River watershed, and they're advocating for having 2 dams taken down, one in Pembroke and one in the State Street Dam in Hanson. And it seems to me where we're going to have the ability for more testing by EPA, that they're ahead of the game as far as taking down those dams. I would think it could make the pollution worse.
Actually, could I?
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify, so the North-South River Watershed Association received a grant from DEP from our Natural Resource Damage Program to do they're essentially looking at the feasibility of the possibility of removing dams, both Curtis Crossing Dam and State Street Dam. That work is ongoing. They're not at a point, in my understanding, that they're going to be advocating for next steps, in part because well, I shouldn't say advocating for it. It's even from what they said the other day, they confirmed that any type of decision on removing dams is going to be taken into account by the whole community, as well as what they want the river to look like and how they want to use it. But also, that wouldn't happen until the cleanup was done, because you wouldn't want to have make the situation worse.
Okay,
you know,
that's what I was hoping you would say. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, I attended the site visit to both those places, and I have to say, they were very enthusiastic about taking down those dams. And when I voiced my concerns about what we're talking about tonight, they were rather dismissive about it. And to me, it's dangerous to take down those dams until everything is cleaned up upstream. And they really do need to do better testing down there. There's a side jaunt of this, is that taking down the dam underneath the State Street Bridge is going to be interesting, because a lot of what was rebuilt on top of that was built on top of that dam. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's the sideshow. I was concerned. I don't think they took this seriously enough. But I mean, I'm sure they take it seriously, but I think they were dismissing the potential dangers. That was my take.
Thank you. I do know that they'll be, in fact, I think we've had some additional conversation, and they were at the Hanover meeting the other day, and my understanding from what was communicated from North-South River at the Hanover meeting was that they would be taking into account all of this, and so they wouldn't advocate for any removal until...
I hope so. Well, I think none of this had come really to the surface when I was involved with that meeting. So I'm hoping that,
I think that your concerns are being considered.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're just going to go over to Zoom now. Lisa, do you have any questions in the chat?
There is one. It seems that listing the site as a Superfund site is necessary. Historically, what is the potential economic impact to homeowners close to it? I am on the other side of Winter Street near the Ames Way brush pile.
Bob, do you want to? I'll mention the fact sheets. You're getting the mic. So as we ended up mentioning, this was a common question that we received last week at the Hanover meeting. So in response, EPA, we have uploaded a FAQ, a frequently asked questions, to our website that's going to cover some of those questions about property value and how is your property potentially going to be affected if there is a Superfund site in your community. So that's on our website. If you have trouble finding it, please let me know. It's going to be under something called publicly available documents, basically what we think is going to be of the most interest to the public. But Bob, go ahead and expand.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I was going to add is, you know, the contamination is there, right? Sort of changing what program oversees that cleanup doesn't make the contamination any worse. I think oftentimes it's the fear of the unknown, and so obviously, as we talked about earlier, we try to be open and transparent about our program and make sure that the information is available. Charlotte probably 5 times a day answers questions from sort of current or prospective homeowners on, you know, sites in other communities. I am not aware that any residential properties at this site are directly impacted by the contamination. So it really is, you know, it's sort of, we believe sharing information will you know, kind of help allay people's fears, make sure that they understand, you know, where the site is, what the site is, and again, we want to be part of the solution here, and certainly, you know, we get the site addressed, and everyone moves on from there.
Thanks, Bob. Go ahead.
Hey, can I actually follow up on that? You said, to your knowledge, that none of the residential properties are affected by any of the pollution to date. How many of us here live just on the other side of the southern cleanup zone that you depicted earlier? So that any of the water adjacent properties there, we were happy to see that the wells weren't affected. What do we know about groundwater? Is there any risk to gardens, livestock, pools, any sort of recreation that we're doing sort of with, you know, on the water adjacent lands?
Yeah, Mass DEP can talk about some of the risks associated with the site.
So we've determined that the groundwater from the site, portions of the site, flows into the river system. So that's where the groundwater is flowing into the river. So it isn't flowing toward any residential properties.
So we're on the opposite bank. That wouldn't affect the opposite bank?
Each side of the river, the groundwater flows into the river.
Thank you.
Lisa, any questions on Zoom? Oh, Bob.
Can I ask for my seat?
Yes, we'll just get to you. We'll go to Zoom, and then Lauren here will bring the mic to you.
So far, as next steps, are we correct that the town of Hanover and Hanson select boards need to give permission / vote to move forward with the Superfund? If that is so, do we have a timeline for this?
Yeah. Mandy, do you want to talk about what's needed for it to be listed?
So I can confirm that the Hanson Select Board did already vote to support this site going to a Superfund site. I am not aware of whether Hanover has taken that vote yet.
Yeah, hi, and I can add that from EPA's perspective, what we need is the letter of the governor, of approval from the governor. However, we are going forward already in terms of we're starting the reassessment part already. So with any input from the towns, as long as we don't receive any oppositions from the town, EPA, you know, is ready to commit and go forward with the process.
Great, thank you, Chow. Go ahead, you can ask your question.
Okay, I just wondered about the health risk.
Can you Bring it up a little higher.
Is it on? Okay, sorry about that. I just wondered about the health risk. Myself and a lot of my neighbors that are here tonight have been across from the site for over 50 years, and our kids have played in the water, you know, done water activities. Is there any health risks that you know of from being with this contaminated water most of their lives?
So the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has done 2 separate health assessments, epidemiological studies, and those are, there are 2 fact sheets, I think, if I remember correctly. There are 2 fact sheets which explain the results of those studies. And in fact, Mass DPH participated in public meetings in Hanover, I think in 2018, and explained the results of their study. So that's not my area of expertise, so I can't really comment further, but we can get you access to those studies.
And just so folks are aware, these studies are actually on the Town of Hanover website for fireworks as well. They have a list of that slide that had all, oh, here it is, that has all the lists of all these fact sheets and different and presentations, includes those DPH documents, and those are posted on the Town of Hanover website as well.
Yep, so we'll go to you and then we'll put the mic back in the stand after. Go ahead.
My question is, when are they going to stop working? When do they run out of money? And how long is it until they start up again and plant trees and all that? I mean, how many more years do we have to look at that? I'm right across the way, and I see a big white tent, and there's a bright light that beams in my doors every single night, and the noise. So how much longer do we have to look at that?
Yeah, so we'll start with Mass DEP. You can kind of talk about, you know, timing for what's left with the money, and then we'll pass over to EPA to talk about more of that long-term view.
So for one of my slides, I presented essentially what the next steps are. I think it was the last one of my slides. Mass DEP and the cooperating parties are performing the last bits of work that we need to perform out there based on the funding that's available. So that work will begin again in March, and we think it will last probably until October, and then we will be demobilizing from the site, and then the site will be secured by Hanover Police.
Will they be taking down that big white tent and taking away the equipment, or are they going to leave it there until they start up again?
There will be some equipment stored at the site, and I believe the plan is at this moment to keep that big white tent up because it's providing shelter for some of our equipment. We don't want the equipment to rust.
Can I just have one more question? Why did they take down all of the trees that they did along the water? It was every single tree. It was supposed to be, that was supposed to be a protected. That's what I was told when I bought my house, that I'll never look at anything over there. It's unbuildable, and the trees will always be there. And one day I'm looking at them being whisked away by this big machine. And in my opinion, they didn't have to take as many down, but are they going to plant them all back again? It takes years to grow trees.
Right, so we had to get special permission because it's a protected area to remove the vegetation, but the vegetation had to be removed because the ordinance was inside the roots of some of those big trees, and it was dangerous. We couldn't complete the job without removing the trees because we needed to access the roots. So unfortunately, we had to remove those trees. The issue of how the site will be restored hasn't yet been decided because the work hasn't been completed. So,
All right, thank you.
And then we'll go over to the Zoom then. 2 questions? Okay. So we'll take these 2 questions and then we'll come back to the room.
Okay, the first question states, Hanover opposed this in the past. What options do we have if they say no again?
So, Mass DEP, you want to start with? Go ahead, or pass it down to Bob, whoever. Do you want to read the question one more time, Lisa?
Hanover opposed this in the past. What options do we have if they say no again?
Chow, I see it in front of you, sorry.
I'm not quite sure I understand if they say no again. As I mentioned earlier, for EPA to start the process of listing the NPL site and to have put aside the resources to continue the cleanup work from Mass DEP, we would need the letter of the governor. So that is the procedure that EPA has to go through.
Yeah, so I guess we're assuming the governor would look to the towns for their opinion, but this is sort of outside of EPA's purview as to what the governor would weigh as far as deciding to send us that letter, but we would need the governor to sort of ask us to put it on the list.
Second question. We understand the negotiations with the responsible parties failed with the Attorney General's office. Is there anything the public can do to reopen or help hold the parties responsible?
Yeah, so the site is potentially moving on now to the next level, potentially, to EPA, so it would just be, new negotiations that would be opened up at that time.
Right, so if we're talking about sort of enforcement, if it's on the national priorities list, then EPA would handle that through the Department of Justice. We would engage many of the same parties and perhaps others to hopefully have this continue as a PRP lead, as we call it, potentially responsible party lead project. But the federal program, what the state program doesn't have that the federal program has is the backstop of the super fund that we can proceed ourselves if we don't find parties that are sort of willing and able and can be held responsible to move forward. We can do it ourselves and then seek recovery of those costs.
I think that back when Hanover, and they did oppose it hard, was objecting to this, they hadn't started blowing things up on a daily or a Friday basis. And I know you've all heard it. The siren goes off and they blow whatever up. That was not going on back when they were objecting to it. Now it's kind of out in the open. They can no longer hide what's been going on over there. That's my thought not as a selectman, but as a person who's lived with it for 46 years.
Do they need to unanimous vote?
Oh. So I don't know where that question came from.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't know. Yeah. Because that's up to kind of the select boards. So Shannon asked them, do they need a unanimous vote? That's going to be kind of a local and like up to the town. I'm not sure how they're going to handle it. If you're from Hanover, you can reach out. I know that their select board said that they have their emails online and you can send questions to them at the last meeting. Go ahead, sir.
Well, excuse me, Wes Molyneux. I'm a former 13-year member of the Hanover Conservation Commission. I am not in any position at the moment. However, I have attended, this is the third one of these meetings that I have attended, and I have asked questions but have not received answers. And I jumped up because my questions are relevant to what you just discussed. We're moving forward. I would like to keep the cleanup continuing. It's a given that we have to go to the super fund. Hanover doesn't have $200 million to contribute to a cleanup, so we have to go to the super fund. And you have to approve it. Let's face it, that question was asked a couple of times in Hanover. It will be approved and it will go on. But the bureaucracy moves slowly. The lady asked, how long will it be? Well, we're probably looking 5-6 years down the line. Here's the question that I asked twice already, and I am very happy that the Attorney General's office is tuned in. The major responsible party in this situation is the Department of Defense. 18 tons of munitions have been taken out of that site. That is a relic of World War II, primarily. And the Department of Defense, how much have they contributed to the Tronox Fund?
Crickets.
Zero. And the Attorney General's office has been negotiating with the Department of Defense, and we have gotten zero. And I would like to know why. The Attorney General's office was not present at the last meeting. Question was asked. The town administrator said they're not here, but we don't know why. The proposal I have made twice is for the Attorney General to negotiate future with the Department of Defense to get enough funds to allow Tetra Tech to continue their work at the site rather than closing the site down and then starting it up again. I encouraged my town leaders to contact Congressman Markey, Senator Warren, Senator Markey. What committees do they sit on? They are senior members of the Armed Services Committee, which oversees a $8 billion defense budget. Why can't they come up with 10 million, 20 million to tide us over until we become a Superfund site? That's my question. I asked the question at the last meeting, if we close the site down, will Tetra Tech, which has done a really good job at the cleanup, will they be allowed to come back? And the answer I got was, probably not, because they are working for the responsible parties, and that would be a conflict of interest. Okay, so they're going to be gone. So please, will somebody contact our Congress people to persuade them to get DOD funds to keep Tetra Tech on the site until the Superfund kicks in? Will one of you address the feasibility of that?
I think it's the responsibility of everybody here to do what you're saying. We've all sent letters and calls and to the governor, to the to these senators that you're mentioning. But the more they hear from us, the better. We are doing our part, but it's every single citizen does it. It just each one adds to to their. They're going to be more aware if more people reach out to them.
I'm sure that we could come up with a letter, couldn't we, from the Board of Selectmen to these various people and, send it out officially, but Ed's right. The more they hear from their constituents, the louder the voice has to be. We're kind of powerless until we really start to make noise. And
That's
what
right,
we have
and
to
we're
do.
not making noise. And this whole thing has been kept quiet. We've had 7 years of not knowing what's going on down there in the fireworks, and then all of a sudden, there's no money left. Well, I think we should hear back some sort of an answer from those 3 office holders who have very important positions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So we'll move back over to the Zoom. Oh,
Wait.
Ann, can you just wait 1 second? Yeah, just hold, we're gonna set it up and then we'll tell you when we're ready for you to speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hang on, one more second.
Office. Just wanted to chime in with respect to our presence at tonight's meeting as opposed to not attending last week's meeting. We agreed not to attend last week's meeting at the request of the host, given that the focus of last week's agenda and in fact tonight's agenda was really about the future of the site. And I should share that all settlement discussions are confidential, but that if folks have other questions for the Attorney General's office, they are welcome to email me, and my email address is anne.landry@mass.gov, and I am happy to connect with the team in our office that has been working on these issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Anne. And if you didn't catch her email, because I know that was quick, come up to me at the end of this meeting and I'll make sure that you're able to write it down and get it. Or again, you can call me, email me, and I will make sure that you have her contact as well. And just say, we can't hear you again.
So that we could be present and listen. Much appreciated.
Great. Thanks, Anne. Lisa, do we have any other questions in the chat?
Yes. Oh, so Anne's email address again, it's anne.landry@mass.gov. Is there a reason why the governor would not approve this Superfund?
We're not privy to the governor's decisions, so yeah. Go ahead if you want to elaborate. Yeah. It looks like they're doing a little, is there another question?
I gather this is a statement. It just says, wow, that is not what the Hanover town manager told the meeting attendees. We don't want to know. And then I do have another question here. Thank you for your time this evening in presenting the overview of the current conditions of the future steps. I live on the Hanson side with direct access to Factory Pond. I have long advocated that the site be declared an EPA Superfund site. I'm excited that this day has come. In my opinion, it's long overdue. I look forward to seeing the pond and the land opened up for public access.
Great. Thank you for your comment. I see someone in the room.
Hi, yes, I live on Winter Street, right on the pond. I've been there for 35 years. Now, over the years, I've seen a lot of beautiful wildlife come back. And I'm sure you guys did core samples of the water for heavy metals. Well, is that what you're looking for? I saw a barge out there doing core samples in the water a few years ago.
So your question is, were there core samples taken of sediment in Factory Pond? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes, there were. The Tetra Tech, who works with the cooperating parties, did a study probably 5 years ago. They did some extensive coring of the sediment in Factory Pond, and so that information is also available, publicly available. If you would like that, I can help you obtain that.
Well, my other question is, if they're planning on doing a cleanup, are they going to dredge the pond? And if so, is the sediment going to flow downstream into the river? And how would they prevent it?
So a cleanup decision hasn't been made yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions in the room? Yes?
I have a question about one of the slides which stated that there has been no contamination to private or public wells. So my question, I guess, is do we know where those wells were located, and is that information publicly available?
So yes, the location of public water supply wells is publicly available, and so are the sampling and analysis data that is required by Mass DEP for those public water supply wells. So that data, those data are available on Mass DEP's data viewer. So if you need that information, I can help you obtain that.
I'm more concerned about private wells, which you said they have not been affected either.
So Mass DEP and the cooperating parties did sample some private residential water supply wells and some irrigation wells, and no contaminants were detected. However, most of the folks in Hanover anyway who live around the pond, my understanding is that they're all on municipal water.
Okay, again, I'm concerned that we state that no private wells have been impacted. As the owner of a private well, which is literally the second house downstream in the Head River, you guys haven't tested my well.
How many have you tested?
Any neighbors with Dennis? Do you have a well? Anybody have a well? No. I'm not trying to jack you up. I'm so behind this project. It really needs to be done. I'm just concerned that we can't make a blanket statement that there's been no impact when we don't know that.
If you want to let me know where there are private residential wells that haven't been sampled or located, I'm happy to take that information.
Okay, great. And then just a comment, I fully support this project. I hope that my neighbors here, the Hanson Select Board, the Hanover Select Board, they support it as well. As stated by Les, I don't think there's a real option here. The only other option, if we don't list this, is a 10-foot high rusty chain link fence around that site for the rest of our lives. So I hope we support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Would you, go ahead.
I'm Christy, I live from Hanover, and I got a question. On the north side of the industrial park, what's going to happen to all 26 businesses due to the Superfund site? Hello? Anybody get an answer?
I don't really know the lay of the land.
Yeah.
The state too.
King Street Industrial Park, 26 businesses. What are you guys going to do for us?
Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about how we...
So I guess we're hesitating. EPA, we just got here. So, we haven't gotten in depth at really any of the site-specific information. I guess if we want to call it the former plant area, if that's what we're talking about, it would be subject to a remedial investigation. Perhaps even prior to that, as Mandy talked about, trying to get access to some properties for some additional sampling. I don't know if any of those are the same properties you're talking about.
Yep.
But there would be an investigation. I guess if there's contamination there, that would have to be addressed. And
You've got new properties popping up, new buildings being built. In the meantime, what are you guys going to do?
Yeah, again, so there really is no meantime for EPA. We need to get it on this list, and then our work begins. So I guess in the meantime, that would be in the purview of Mass DEP.
And then just sitting here, listen to you, you say the tent's going to stay. This poor lady has to deal with a light. What's going to go on with that? 24/7.
I guess I'm not.
You have spotlights on the property that are going 24/7. This lady has to deal with it.
Not my spotlights.
Yeah, I mean, fair is fair. You didn't answer her question. You just said you're going to leave the tent. Be common courtesy.
So with regard to the spotlights, if you let me know where you are, I can work with the contractor to see if we can.
It's Beechwood Road. Anybody that faces the pond, because I live 2 houses down, and I have that spotlight. Another couple of houses down. We all have that spotlight, and it reflects off the pond, and the trees are now disappearing.
You have a night light.
Okay, I'll talk to the contractor and see if there's something we can do about that.
How far down are they going to keep going? It just seems like, I looked out today, I can see all the snow and the hill across from my house, where before I could never see it. So I can see a few trees going across the front of them on the other side of the pond. Now it seems like they're still working on the other side. And I'm saying, boy, I thought they were doing everything up here, but all of a sudden I see a trailer that goes up there, quite a ways down, where I'm almost at the bend at Factory Pond. And I'd just like to know, how much further down are they gonna go?
Sorry, just also for future, thank you for your comment. We're just asking that you can talk into the mic. This is for the people that are on cable access and Zoom, just to make sure they can. I
Can't help it, I'm 411. But my next question is what happens to the commercial property as far as value with a Superfund site?
Well, again, we're happy to talk to anyone individually as far as if you're talking about sort of, I spoke to someone after the last meeting talking about, mortgages and bank liability, and that's obviously a concern. We've taken strides in the past several years to make amendments to the Superfund law to help give more liability protection to lenders, which is really, I think, hopefully solve that kind of problem. But I guess, we do need to find out if there's residual contamination on those properties, and if that represents a current or future risk, it may be something that does require additional cleanup. But we don't have that answer today, but it sounds like something we do need to study.
All right. Answer my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll do one more in the room and then we'll go to Zoom.
Hi, my name is Lou Russo. I've been a long-time resident in Hanson, and I fully support the fact that this is not a hidden topic any longer. It should not have ever been. It should be out and it should be taken care of. My question is, this gap that we're facing, that the money has either held for purposes in the future, when do we get, what is the likely lifetime that it's going to take to move from not enough funding to proper funding? I heard some suggestions that we all get involved and talk to our senators and representatives, but what else can be done? And this is too important to let it just sit.
Yeah, I guess EPA can't speak for what you might do before you're placed on the Superfund list. So it sounded like there was going to be some further.
Who could?
Well, I don't think that any of us can say how long it's going to take. When we had our meeting at the select board, they told us flat out that that gap was going to be whatever it was until we got on the Superfund site. So we have to move that forward. The gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, that from Hanover, he's got a great suggestion there of just putting pressure on our state reps and our senators, and there were 3 of them. Where did that guy go? There were 3 of them that Elizabeth Warren, Markey and Markey. There's 2 of them?
No. I said Markey.
No, I know. No, I think that there's a state rep and there's a senator that are all involved here. If we get after them and, demand that they do something to cross that gap with the company that's there now, I think that sounds like a plan. I mean, we could try.
Well, I'd like to volunteer to do something locally, whatever that may be, whether it's moving the question out into the public at Shaw's Supermarket or whatever it's going to take for petitions. I think this needs to be out, publicized, and get people galvanized to get this thing moving
I'm right there
forward.
with you with it. I've only been on the board for 2 years, barely 2 years, but I've always wanted them to do something about this, always. I heard the stuff coming out of Hanover and it was infuriating. But Hanson hadn't gotten involved because they hadn't gotten to that side of the pond. Well, they're on that side of the pond now. We've got to get involved. So I'd love to have you. We'll do something.
Talk to you in a minute.
All right.
Thank you. We're going to go back to the Zoom now. Lisa, any questions?
I do not have any further questions via Zoom.
Okay. I see a gentleman getting up for a question. No? Okay. Sorry, not to put you on the spot. Are there any more questions in the room? we'll do one more check. I'm gonna put into the Zoom.
No further questions. David DeCosta is a state legislator for the area of Hanover. Anybody wants to reach out there?
Thank you. And so I'll do one more check. Any other last questions or comments in the room? Nope, it doesn't seem like it. So we're just gonna go again to that last slide to have our contact up. I wanna thank everyone for coming out tonight. I heard a lot of good questions and comments. Again, I just wanna remind people, please go to both the Mass DEP and the EPA website. We have a lot of information there. If you can't find what you're looking for, I'm Charlotte Gray. Please reach out to me. I'm here, that's my email, gray.charlotte@epa.gov. We want to make sure you have all the information you need. This recording will be also put on our website as well, so you can go back and watch it. And one last plug, if you would like to join my email list, it's right outside. Thank you so much for coming out. Have a good night.